Hello and welcome to this Photoshop video. I've aimed this mostly at amateur photographers. I have covered the techniques you can see here, smart filters and textures, in relation to many other tutorials, but I thought it may be useful to isolate the technique in a short and to the point video. When we apply filters and textures to our images in Photoshop, that usually means there's going to be a fair degree of trial and error, because creating an effective filter effect usually does require some adjustment, or we're going to need to change that filter. So we find ourselves going backwards and forwards into the filter menu trying different things. There's no great problem with that, but it does get a little bit tedious. I think we can say the same thing for textures as well. How many times have you added a texture, then a couple of days later when you view the image again, you realize that the texture is a bit on the light side, or perhaps it's actually too heavy? Well, it would be nice to have instant access back to that filter to be able to make a change. Well, we can achieve that via a new layer, blend modes, and a smart filter, but don't worry. It takes no longer to create those three than it takes for me to tell you about them. Let's take a look at filter effects first. What I've done here is to open up an image and just apply a simple filter from the Photoshop range. And of course, if I change my mind or feel it needs any adjustment, I can't adjust the filter now. I need to hit Ctrl Z or undo, then I need to go back in and reapply the filter. What we can do is turn this image into a smart filter. We do that by going to the filters menu. There's the option we want sitting right at the top, convert for a smart filter. Look over to the right hand side at the layers thumbnail. We can see we've got a little marker here which telling us that this is in fact a smart filter, and what it's going to allow us to do is to apply filters, and more than one if we want. Then we can go back in and make changes to those filters as many times as we like with a simple click. So let's have a go at that by going to the filter menu once again. I'll go to the artistic filters and the cutout, which is what I applied a few moments ago. There you can see the setting that I used. I'll just apply this quickly just for demonstration purposes. There you can see the filter as we saw it a few moments ago, but it looks somewhat different over in the layers now. That's because we've got quite a degree of flexibility now. I can adjust the image prior to applying the filter effect. I can even adjust the filter effect. Let's take the filter effect first. There it is sitting just below the layer mask. We'll come back to that in a moment. If I change my mind with the filter, or I just want to experiment, I can double click the cutout and we go straight back into the filter, and I can make any adjustments that I want. So let's make a little change here just to demonstrate that we can. I'll move the image into a more appropriate spot. If I put the edge simplicity up a little bit, there you can see gradually I'm changing the image. Let's push it up quite high. If I wanted to quickly look at this in its entirety, I can click OK. I'm straight back onto the main Photoshop screen, but I have the ability to go back and make as many changes as I want. And of course, if I click the layer mask, we've got the advantage of that too. The mask is very valuable, particularly when we add filter effects to pictures that contain people and faces, because faces can be a little distorted with filter effects, so sometimes we need to use the mask to bring back some of the detail of the photo quality image which is still lying beneath our filter here because we've used a smart filter. If I wanted to bring back a little detail in the carriages, for example, I can select black as my foreground color from the color picker. I can select my brush. I would probably select a flow of 10 or 20%, increase the brush size to something that's appropriate, and I can just start to mask my image in this area, and I can bring back detail, as you can see, in the original coaches. How much? Well, that is a personal choice. Another benefit we have here is I'm looking at my image and I'm thinking, well, maybe it's a little bit on the dark side. Maybe I could change that. So what I can do is go back to the image itself. I can double click that, and you'll notice that Photoshop creates almost a copy and places it in the tab here, but we're seeing the original. So what I'd like to do here perhaps is to use my filters, and I'm going to go into my camera raw filter. I just want to increase this a little bit. I've changed my mind just a little bit about the density of the image, and I think it needs to be a little bit brighter. I'm going to click OK. It's applied here. What I need to do is save this and close it down. What I normally do is just hit the little cross, because it says, do I want to save changes? Yes, I do. But what it's done, it's changed my image, but it's applied exactly the same filter effect we had a few moments ago. Now that's pretty useful, and I still have the opportunity to double click the cutout, to go back in, make a change, and have it applied in seconds. Over on the bottom right, we do have the ability to use blend modes here. If I click that and we open it up, you can see what we have. I've got all of the blend modes that we normally see in the layers, and I can use those and see what effects they give me. On this occasion though, I'm going to just bypass those, and we're going to go and add another filter on top of this one, because we can do that too. Just before I do apply two different filter effects, it may be an opportune time for me to say that what we can also do here is pick up this filter effect and drop it in the bin, and we're back to our smart filter, and then we can add two more new filter effects. So let me go up to my filters. I'm going to choose artistic and I'm going to go to plastic wrap. I'm not going to mess around too much with the settings. I'm going to accept what we have here. But now I'm going to go straight back in and add another filter effect. We'll go back to the cutout, I think, and there we can see the effect we have. Again, no changes, just for the sake of speed. So what we now have is two filter effects, both of which are shown to us, both of which we can go back into instantly. So I can go back to the previous plastic wrap by just double clicking, make adjustments and open it up, and I can do the same with the cutout too. Now I also have the mask here, which we've looked at previously, and of course I can go back to the thumbnail, double click, and I can make changes to the original base image, and when I close it down and save it, and I won't need to save it then because I didn't make any changes, the filter effects are applied. I can turn either one of the filters off, just with the little eye, so we can see them individually, but we can also swap these around. Although I found it a little bit tricky to do, we can drag them down and that changes the effect we're looking at. So here we have quite a bit of flexibility. Let me just recap on what we have here. We can double click the thumbnail and edit the image the filter's applied to. We can add a different effect on top of the first effect. We can view them combined or separately, or we can switch one on top of the other. We can turn one or both off. We can mask parts of any filter effect, and of course if we get things wrong we can drag them into the bin. Save this as a Photoshop file. We can open this up next week and pick up exactly where we left off. Now that's a very useful thing to have, because in any creative work, especially when we're adding filters, we often do something one day which we are not so keen on the next. Well, here I'm not too keen on my plastic wrap, so I can just turn it off and I can go back to my cutout, and I could do that a week or two later. Now let's look at a similar way of working for applying textures. As you can see here, I've applied quite a severe texture to this image, and if I come back a day later and decide I've got it too heavy, there's nothing I can do about it. I have to recreate the original image or find the original image and reapply a texture at a different setting. Here though, I can hit Ctrl Z because I can show you, I think, a much better way. We need to create a new layer. Let's do that from the top left of the screen. Layer, new layer. What I want here is from the mode, I want to choose overlay, and I want to tick this little box to fill with neutral color 50% grey. Now when I do this and click OK, there you can see the layer. Now in normal circumstances, if I just created a layer and flooded it with grey, black, white or anything else, I would cover up the image. But because we've got the overlay blend mode, that doesn't happen. So now we can apply our texture to this layer. But of course, if we make this layer a smart filter, we'll have the benefits of that too. So I'm going to go to my filters menu and apply that. There we can see the little symbol alongside. Now I can go and apply the texture that I want. So back to the filters menu, down to the textures this time, and I'm going to just use the basic Photoshop textures. There we can see the texture I applied a few seconds ago. I'm going to drop this down to be quite delicate. I think generally speaking 2 or 3 works for me most of the time, and the scaling, well, we're all going to choose something different, but I'm going to choose that just to give us something to view. Click OK. There we can see the texture, but we've not touched the image at all. The texture is applied above it. So we've got all the benefits of a smart filter that we've already discussed. Plus we can go back into the texturizer and try something else. So in this instance, if I double click and I want to try something completely different, such as sandstone, I can do that. This one may need a little bit more texture. Let's try that. Click OK. Look how quick and convenient that is. And once again, texturizer again. Let's go to the old favorite of canvas, and again I'll leave the texture set to a light relief of about 4. Look how quick and easy it is to go in and out and make adjustments as we see fit, and that's great to be able to do the next day or next week. And of course what I could do also is to select the image, go to my filters menu and convert that to a smart filter. And what I'll do here is quickly add a filter effect, but this time just for interest I'll use a third-party filter effect. I'll go to one of my topaz impression filters. Let's see how these work. I've got a number of different presets here. I don't want to dwell too much on this. Let's just pick one and apply it. Let's just go with that. I'm going to click OK down at the bottom right. There you can see the filter effect applied. Now I've got the best of all worlds because I've got my texture on it that I can remove or change, and I've got my filter on the image that I can remove, change or add to. If you want to remove the smart filter status, you can go to the right of the layer here, right click and choose rasterize. But what it's going to do is assume that you want to keep your filter effect. So to finish this video, I'll select that. You can see the smart filter icon has gone, the layer mask has gone, but we can see that the image is still filtered. And we still have the texture, and we still have a texture that we can adjust should we want to. If you've enjoyed this video and you find that it meets your needs, can I invite you to our website to take a look at Photoshop for photographers. I have 60 separate videos and they're presented in 7 individual parts. Part 1 contains 14 videos and it's completely free. Come to our website, download part 1 and see what you think. The Photoshop for Photographers videos are all laid out in a logical learning order. The easiest first and the more advanced later on. If you wish to learn Photoshop skills, the videos you view need to be practical and they need to be relevant. We need to learn in a measured way. Cramming info into our heads just doesn't work. We don't retain the information. Photoshop for Photographers is what you're going to need. If you're watching on YouTube, can I encourage you to subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell to make sure you're advised whenever I put up a new video, and take a look at the links below.